Hey, everybody. Welcome to Relish This, the nonprofit marketing podcast. I'm your host, Stu Swineford. I'm the co-founder of Relish Studio. We're a digital marketing agency committed to helping nonprofits thrive. My guest on the show today is Stacey Sanders, and she is the executive director of Elevating Connections. And Elevating Connections is this amazing nonprofit that helps siblings who have been separated during foster care come together. They also have some support mechanisms for kids who are aging out of foster care here in the state, and they just do some really neat stuff to bring people together. Our conversation today was really fantastic. I had a great time talking to Stacey. We connected a couple weeks ago and discussed some things about her business, and I thought she'd be a great guest. And so brought her on. We talked about escalating engagements. We talked about all of the different stakeholders that nonprofits might have, really thought outside of the box a little bit in terms of how to re-engage some of their donors and talk through some of the assets that they have and how to best leverage those. I think it's a really great show. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Thanks for joining me today on the show. It's really good to see you again. We've had our first conversation last week and thought it'd be fun to bring you on today. And I have a lot to talk about with you, I bet. So Stacy Saunders from Elevating Connections is with us today. So Stacy, tell us a little bit about you and how you came into this nonprofit world in which you live.
Well, happy to, Stu. Thanks so much for having me on today. I love talking about what I do, so thank you. I am a lifelong Colorado resident, so born and raised right here in Colorado. I love my home state, and I want to be very clear about this. I love Broncos, no matter how they're playing. So I'm a diehard Broncos. I am the aunt of 4 kids. I have 2 sisters and a mom. So I love Colorado, and that's a quick nutshell about me. And in terms of my work and how I got into this, so I got into child welfare. I'm the founder and executive director of Elevating Connections.
Great.
And so I got into child welfare 9 years ago. And working for CASA agency, which is court-appointed special advocates. And we work with volunteers who advocate for kids in foster care. And shortly after that, I was at a statewide conference where one of the workshops was siblings who were separated in foster care and learning about Camp 2 Belong. I'm like, wait, what? I was so new to child welfare. I'm like, what do you mean we separate siblings? So I sat in on this workshop and listened to folks speak about the impact of that and about Camp 2 Belong. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I can't imagine what I would do without my sister. So I decided to jump on board Camp 2 Belong and help bring it to Colorado.
Okay.
And Camp 2 Belong, which I know I'm saying very fast, but it's Camp 2 Belong, is an international organization. It's a week-long summer camp where we reunite siblings separated in foster care. So there's 13 camps around the country and 1 in Australia. And so in 2011, I said, yeah, I'd love to bring camp to Colorado. Fast forward to our first year in 2013, and I've got 2 years under my belt in child welfare, and camp is amazing. And I know somewhere in my head, I'm like, this is turning into something. I didn't know what exactly. But in 2014, I have such a passion for it. In 2014, the person who brought camp to Colorado, she and I were talking about how amazing camp is. 1 week a year to get siblings together is not enough.
Right.
And so decided at that moment, literally 6 years ago, right about now, to start a nonprofit from scratch. And focusing on the sibling relationship and impacting what is, quite frankly, one of the most important relationships any of us can have. So if you think about, for those folks that have siblings and that impact, it's lifelong. So our siblings are the folks that we learn how to problem solve with. We get mad at each other. We make up with each other. We defend each other. We play pranks on our parents, all of that. And that's how we build our relationships. And as we get older, those are the folks, my sisters are the ones, I turn to on good days, bad days, everything in between.
Right.
And so they're our touchstone for our whole life. So when we think about the kids who've been separated in foster care, the impact is huge. It compounds their trauma. And so the idea of working with them and addressing that population where nobody else was in Colorado, I'm like, okay,
Right.
I found my calling.
Right. Well, it's hard enough. I can only imagine. Unfortunately, I didn't have to go through foster care or be separated from my brother, but it's got to be hard enough just to be in foster care, much less to have this anchor kind of ripped away from you. That sounds like really important and challenging work.
It is both of those things. I absolutely love what I do, but there are days where it's really hard, and I have conversations with parents or foster parents or kids who've aged out of the system and have been separated from their siblings for years and have no relationship with them, saying to me, Stace, I wish you were around when I was a kid.
Right.
To give them the opportunity to make memories and build that very important sibling relationship.
Right.
But I'm thrilled that we're here and that we are able to offer the programming and the activities that we do. So starting a nonprofit from scratch was never in my plans, but I'll tell you what, it is absolutely what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, that's great. It's fun to find our calling for sure. So do you work with people of all ages to reunite siblings, or are you primarily working with kids who are in the foster care program now? Or tell us a little bit more about what you guys do at Elevating Connections.
So we work with older youth and siblings. So we have two programs that we added in an older youth program, which I'll talk about. But the siblings, we for camp and most of our programming that we do, because we do connecting events throughout the year to get them together. So around 8 to 18 for the siblings. So we go a little bit younger for our day activities, but overnight camp, 8 to 18. But we also will work. And then we added in, when we started Elevating Connections, we knew we wanted to have an older youth component, and connections is a really key word for us, which is why it's in our name. Being older youth who've reached out of the system without finding a permanent home, connect to their community and to us and resources. And so to that end, we have created our Empowering Youth Expressions program, which allows older youth to speak their truth through spoken word, poetry, song, art, comedy.
Right.
And we have an annual poetry jam, and we help connect them to their community. And really, it's been amazing to watch them be empowered to just speak their truth. There's no limit to what they can talk about. And so those youth are up to age 25.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we want to work with older youth. So in the state of Colorado, kids can stay in foster care until they're 21.
Okay.
And for older youth who find a permanent connection, I really recommend that, because there's so many more services and resources available to them. At 21, like, okay, bye, thanks. So we want to provide a connection beyond that and let them know that they always have a safe place with us. So
that's great. It's like a place to land after they kind of age out of the system a little bit.
Exactly.
So are a lot of those kids then becoming part of your program in terms of helping some of the other kids who are younger than them in foster care, or are you providing really just a support network for them? How does that relationship work?
That is evolving. That's a great question. So it is something we want our older youth who have started working their way through some of their challenges of being out of the system and being on their own to mentor and support and role model for the younger youth. And it just kind of happens organically with the workshops that we offer and the activities at camp and things like that. It just happens organically where the older youth kind of step into this role model role. Right. Better word. And we're hoping down the road to be able to expand that a little bit and have more of a mentoring program with our older youth and our younger youth.
Right.
Because there's so much power in that. Like I tell them, the poetry jam and the writing workshop started because I got to hear the poem of a 15-year-old girl who wrote about being separated from her brother. And it occurred to me then, which that was in 2018, that I can't tell their stories.
Right.
As well as they can, and I shouldn't really try. I do because I need to, but they speak their truth and tell their stories. And same thing for older youth mentoring younger youth. I can't relate to their experience very well because I was not in foster care and I was not separated from my siblings, but the older youth can. So it's something we want to expand.
That sounds great. So that's a great segue into my next question, which is around your goals in terms of where you're trying to move the program, particularly, as we kind of move into our giving season here through the remainder of 2020. And then, what are, and certainly there's a lot of question marks in terms of how we're going to be doing this on a go forward basis. But looking at 2021 and what you're hoping to accomplish, what are some of those goals, both to kind of close out the year and then move into opportunities for next year?
Great question, and which I've given a lot of thought to. So we have done a really good job of pivoting our programming during the pandemic. So we took our annual poetry jam, went viral. Didn't go viral. I wish it went virtual. Okay. So the youth said, "Stace, we still want to do it," so we did that. Our summer camp, instead of doing an overnight camp, we managed to do a day camp. And we've still offered programming and support, and we're offering technology support to our older youth, providing tablet and technology hookups so they can stay connected. So to that end, it's made me think a little bit differently about what we need to do going forward. So to finish out the year, really our year-end fundraising campaign is going to be about raising money for that technology and helping our youth stay connected. Okay. And then was raising money to offer more programming and get ready for camp next year, because camp is an expensive endeavor. Right. And our long-term plans, and hopefully next year is the year we find funding for staff. For the last almost 6 years, I've been the unpaid executive director. Right. And so we're very much hoping that we find some a fairy godmother out there or a grant. Gotcha. That will help allow us to do that, because we have really big plans for our youth long term, and so we need paid staff to make that happen. Absolutely. So those are some of our 21 goals. Okay. It's in terms of the grant process. Are you in the middle of that process right now? What's the season for grant writing? And it's all year. It's all year. There's different grants that come about. This is a big time to be writing grants, and we're actually because I work a full-time job in addition to Elevating Connections. Right. And so is my board. So we're actually in the process of hiring a grant writer. Okay. To help us do that. Okay. We have discovered that we can't do that well. So, but we have some grants due. We're looking at some smaller grants right now. But we're in the grant writing season. Gotcha. For sure. And ideally, what's the number, what kind of number are you guys trying to hit to fund everything you want to do next year? So if I had my full operating budget covered for what we want to do, it would be about $250,000 annually. Okay. And that's pretty bare. That would be 2 full-time staff. Okay. And all of our programming and some infrastructure that we need to run. So, okay. Benefits and insurance for camp, those kinds of things that have to happen so we can do our programming. Right. So, and then how many campers do you guys bring through your system every year? So it varies every year because it depends on how many volunteers we have. We have a very strict ratio of adults to kids. Okay. Our goal is to have 50 campers approximately every year. Okay. We had our biggest year ever was 49. We got to 49, but over the years that we've had camp, we've served over 200 siblings. Oh, that's fantastic. For our summer camp and connecting events. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. But we will always be a primarily volunteer-run organization. So we will have, nonprofits. There's a misnomer out there that nonprofits shouldn't have to have too much staff or pay people to do. I'm like, okay, yes, but it doesn't get done. Unless you have dedicated. But we will always be. We have a tremendous volunteer base that we're always expanding, and so we will always be a primarily volunteer-run organization.
That's great. How many volunteers do you guys engage per year, do you think?
So I just sent out an invite for, we're having a virtual happy hour with my volunteers because I wanted to connect with them before the end of the year. And so we have about 50 in our core base of volunteers, which is pretty cool. When I added up all the numbers, I'm like, wait, what? It was very exciting to see those numbers grow. And so every year we add new folks to our family of volunteers who care about our mission.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then is there any, so one of the things we like to talk about, sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. One of the things we like to look at is what are your different stakeholder groups that you're trying to reach? So what I'm hearing is, there's obviously this volunteer group. There are, there's a group of kids who need your services. There's donors. And then my guess is that there might be some other tiers of donors in terms of, kind of single donors versus kind of super donors, and then potentially corporate donors or sponsors. So when you think about all of those groups, have you done any analysis on those to see what commonalities you might find in those groups that you could tease out in terms of when you start looking at targeting and trying to build those user groups?
We've started doing that more this year. And taking a look at who are our people and who do we need to be reaching out to, and how do we target them? So we're starting to do that, and the corporate piece is a little more challenging, I think, in finding ins into corporations. But what I do find, the commonality between, it doesn't matter if I have a $10,000 donor or a $100 donor, the commonality for every single one of them is the mission speaks to them. So because it's about family, it's about connection, it's about maintaining that sibling relationship and giving voice to youth. So I have yet to have any person that I've talked to in the last 6 years say, Stacey, that's the dumbest mission I've ever heard. So that's a connection I have. And then we work in terms of resources and supports and working within the system. We have caseworkers from the Department of Human Services and attorneys and all sorts of folks that we work with that serve the families. So we're part of that network too, which is not part of fundraising, but it's really a part of our infrastructure and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the kids that we serve.
So that might be another stakeholder group that's kind of like a vendor. That's not exactly the right word. Partner vendor kind of relationship where they're supplying some sort of tangible asset, whether that's advice or consultative or things of that nature. So one of the things that sometimes occurs, and it'd be certainly interesting to explore for you, is how people might escalate through these different stakeholder groups. So seeing a lot of times what we'll see is volunteers turn into small donors kind of turn into big donors sometimes bring their businesses or their the place that they work in as corporate sponsors, and so there's an escalation. In the for-profit world, a lot of times you hear this talked about as a value ladder, where you're basically kind of transitioning people from one type of engagement to another type of engagement, and really looking for opportunities to latch on to those things and see how to do that. Have you seen that pattern in your user groups at all, or is that something that's maybe not common at your organization?
We're starting to see that. I think what connected for me, the first year that we were doing this, I was very focused on, we need to find funding so I can get paid because the mission's so important. And what happened, my focus wasn't on mission. It was more on, let's get me out there so I can do this full time. And when I switched back to thinking about what is our mission, more that what you just talked about happened and is happening more. So I can look at our volunteers or some of our donors and know exactly, do that 6 degrees of separation and know where they came from.
Okay, that's great.
They came to us. And so through that, some of our volunteers have brought folks in that have turned out to be big donors. So we had some volunteers that brought us a $10,000 donor last year at our annual fundraising event. I had no idea what they were going to give us, and there it was.
That's great.
And they were back this year. They did a sponsorship for our annual fundraiser. I'm not sure if I have a check waiting for me. We'll see if something's coming. My Elevated Connections office, but
Sure.
But they came back. And so what I'm discovering and learned a few years ago, it's really about building relationships and letting it start. You know, if somebody comes to me with $50, that's fantastic, because $50 fills a backpack for a camp for the kids. And then we bring them, they either volunteer or they bring somebody else in. But and I want people to keep coming back to our organization in whatever capacity they want to do it, as a volunteer, a donor, whatever speaks to them to support our mission. So I don't know that I have a formal plan like you were talking about, but really, I talk to people, and then some of my team talk to people and bring folks in. And so, it's just kind of crazy where things lead.
Yeah, so, it really is. It's interesting, the connections that we make. And that's one of the things that we look at it with marketing in general, is particularly in the nonprofit space, marketing and this desire for an increased revenue for the organization tends to be thought of as kind of a dirty word in a lot. And I think that there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of things that nonprofit leaders hear when they get when they open up their books and show that they've spent X amount of dollars on marketing. And one of the things, well, there are a few things around that we encourage. And the first is really accepting and understanding that marketing is an investment in your mission, and it's all about expanding your mission. And so if you can find a mechanism by which you can put $1 in and get $10 out, and that helps you reach 10% more kids, or buy 50 more laptops, or fill 100 more backpacks, then that's all about expanding your mission. So it's all mission based. And so reframing that in one's mind is certainly an effective thing to do, just so that we don't get caught up in this idea that it's not right to take that money and try and enhance that mission. And so, I think that language is important. And then the other piece of it is really talking about a spend. And a lot of times we do use that language just in our own minds, in terms of, I'm spending this money. But actually we really like to reframe that conversation and talk about investing, because when someone's making an investment, the idea is that you're getting something out on the other end. It isn't just money out the door. It's not just money out of the hands of your stakeholders. It's money leveraged for a specific purpose to reach more people and to be able to bring this mission to more people. And so, just that reframing, I think, sometimes really helps a lot when just discussing it internally. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, are you trying to expand the board at this point? Are you trying to bring more board members on? Is that, I think I remember.
Yeah. That. Yes. We have 1 or 2 spots open.
Okay.
And we're looking forward to expanding our board. We have a couple of candidates that we're working with right now that I think are hopefully going to work out.
Oh, good.
But that will still be on our board for at least one other person.
Yeah, that's great. And I think looking at that board as a valuable resource that board members, and I serve on a couple of boards, and certainly this isn't my unique idea here. I was talking to a friend of mine on the podcast just the other day who mentioned this, but your board should be doing a lot of lifting for you, and whether that's bringing expertise to the table, or or bringing dollars to the table in terms of activating their network to help. That's really something to, as you're bringing board members on, really considering exactly what role this person's going to fill and how they're going to enhance what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. And I have a really great board now, and the folks we're considering are going to bring things to the board that we don't currently have. We did a board analysis and kind of our needs last year with consultants that we were able to use a little grant money for and figure out what our needs really were. And so we've been using that now to figure out what we still need.
Right.
Which is great. And we have a great board, but having a board that's dedicated to your mission and willing to do something with that dedication is very important.
Right.
I'm lucky enough to have some really good folks on board my board.
That's fantastic. So did you guys just have an event, or are you ramping up for an event here kind of into this holiday season? Okay. And are you, you're still seeing some residual things coming in from that?
Yes, a few things. So it was, we obviously went virtual. Normally it's a dinner. Right. We did the pivot like so many people are doing this year and did a virtual event, and we celebrated our 5th birthday. And it was a birthday party, which we went with the birthday party theme one because it's our 5th birthday, but we have a birthday party at camp because siblings oftentimes don't celebrate their birthdays together. Mm-hmm. So it's anniversary, we have birthdays. Anyway, so we did about an hour and 10 minutes or so of programming and some entertainment and ask and, raising some money with our community. So it was not our most lucrative one.
Okay.
But based on, how much it cost us to do it, and which is a lot less than a dinner.
Right.
I'm still pleased with the outcome, and we're still tallying things up. But it was quite a pivot. It's a very different experience to do a virtual event, fundraising event, than in person. So, but I have, I'm grateful to our community and for coming out or turning us on Zoom in their living room and celebrating with us.
How many people attended the event? Do you know?
So it's hard to tell on Zoom, but we, with the tickets we sold and from the people I could see, we probably had 65 or 70. Okay. I would, depending on how many were in their houses. So
right.
Yeah.
How many tickets did you sell, do you think?
We sold, and I should know this answer off the top of my head, but we had 3 sponsorships, and so we sold about 30 tickets or so.
And you had about probably 70 people.
Yeah, but with Zoom, so it's a different scenario. So, because I could see into people's homes and how many people were with them.
Sure.
So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so we probably had maybe 60, 65 folks.
Okay, well, that's great. And then I'm assuming you collected.
And you don't know
information about.
You don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm sure you collected information about the ticket holders at least, and so you have email addresses and things of that nature. Okay.
Yeah, last year for the first year, we decided to hire an events company to help us run that portion of it. So all of our ticket sales, our silent auction items, all of that, everything that happens that night goes through that site.
Okay.
And then we can keep track of everything and all of our donors and what they did. And check out at a live event in particular, or an in-person event it's night and day. It was amazing. So
right.
I would highly recommend it when you get to that point. It's worth every dime.
Cool. To hiring an events coordinator.
Yeah. So, and the events part of it, like my team and I, we still planned the event, but the folks from the company that we use help us do a lot of setup on the front end in terms of ticket sales and getting the site up. And the night of the event, they run check in, check out, and the live. And if you have a live function or cash or the direct appeal, all of that's done. And then there's the reports that are generated afterwards are really, really great.
That's awesome.
And so, like it was it was great.
That's really great advice. I'll ask you afterwards if you're willing to share their information, and we can put that in the show notes. Or
absolutely.
Or would you like to put their information in the show notes? So
it's One Cause, and I did a lot of research on different companies, and they spoke to me, and they have a great team, and we've had the same person the last 2 years run our event for us, and so it's really great. They really become your partner in helping you have a successful event.
Oh, that's just amazing. I know that, this is really cool. An area that a lot of people are wrestling with right now, and it's hard, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a couple more kind of asset questions. So in terms of engaged, volunteers, it sounds like you've reached about 200 total kids over the lifetime of the organization. Do you have an idea of how many donors you have, or how big your email list is, or things of that nature?
I do. And so the 200 kids is the siblings. With the old youth that we work with, so that's another probably 75, 50 to 75. So, yes, my Mailchimp mailing list is about last glance, it was about 1,200 people.
Oh, that's a good solid list.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have in the 6 years we've been in existence, I've never done a mailer. We do everything social media and electronic.
Okay.
So I don't have the capacity or the desire to do, or the expense. It's expensive to do those big mailers. So we do a lot of social media and a lot of electronic reach outs.
Okay.
And that. So.
And how many donors do you think you've had over the course of your 5 years?
That's a good question. We've got to be in a couple hundred, probably more than that.
Okay. Well, I have one idea for you that I'll just share. I'll share now, and it's a little different. But you mentioned that you like to have birthday cakes at all your events because everybody wants to celebrate birthdays with family, and a lot of these kids haven't had that opportunity.
Right.
What I might recommend, or what might be interesting to explore, is going and buying however many cupcakes you think you need to send out to particularly to donors, to allow them to celebrate with you and say, hey, this is a little bit late in terms of our birthday party that we had last month, but we'd like for you to celebrate with us, and wanted to share this cupcake with you as a part of our mission. And then you can tell that story about why a birthday cake is so important. This would be certainly an expense, but as you would want to package them. You'd want to make sure that that they were sealed up and all that stuff. My guess is that there's probably a company out there that would do this for you. I'd have to do some research, but my guess is that you could get someone to actually do this for you. But even if you picked, 100 people or 50 people that you thought were pretty good candidates to get them back in the fold in terms of becoming a donor, I think that would be something that would be really different. And as we move into this digital world, getting something physical is a real treat. And so, that might be something to look into.
It's a great idea. Because we're working on our year-end campaign. So right now, and that would tie in pretty darn well. So that's a good idea. And we actually found a bakery, because we did send I got some cakes for some of our top donors, and a board and stuff for our event the other night, or a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So, yes, I mean,
it's a great idea too.
That might be something to explore. Never be afraid to ask either. I think that's another thing that all of us are a little nervous about doing, is just asking for the thing that we want. And, it doesn't hurt to really just be very specific and say, hey, maybe not only in this cupcake idea, but just as you're reaching out. I don't know how often you go back to your email list, but just have an ask every once in a while. It's just, we're fundraising and we need your help, and $50 fills a backpack, and maybe show what all of that puts into a backpack for a kid.
Yeah.
And that's another kind of reframing of things that I think works really well. Instead of asking for $5 or $10, reframing that into something very tangible that people can wrap their arms around, in terms of, like, for the price of a 6-pack of beer, you can do this for a kid, right? And for the price of one meal out, that means this to some of these kids, and just really starting to create very tangible connections in between the ask and what that does, and what that kind of helps achieve. You see that a lot with, for the cost of a cup of coffee or blah, blah, blah. And it's, and it really does help people kind of go, well, I buy 20 coffees a month. I can afford to skip one of those and give that to someone who needs it more than I do. And so, those are some ways to reframe.
And that's a good idea. We'd like to increase our monthly donor base. So we have a handful of monthly donors right now, and that's a good way to do that. We started with a new fundraising platform earlier this year called Harness. And so that would be a good way to do that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I mean, it's always easier to sell to someone, and it's not that you're selling necessarily. It's easier to re-engage someone with whom you've already engaged than it is to go out and get a new person. Yes. So that's like the cost of acquisition. So particularly as you look at this escalating that we talked about earlier, if that's to get a volunteer, if you know that it costs you $5 in whatever you have to do, whether that's, doing a pay-per-click ad campaign or, whatever that is, whatever that acquisition cost is, that's a sunk cost at that point. And so if you can transition that person, you've already acquired them, so you don't have to spend any more to get them in the fold, right? And so just figuring out ways to ooch people along and turn one-time donors into repeat donors, and turn repeat donors into regular scheduled monthly donations, and just keep figuring out ways to escalate that. We give to Save the Children as just part of our kind of regular deal, and a couple times a year they give us a shout and they say, you're at the $35 a month level or whatever we're at, and for an extra $5 we can help 3 more kids, or whatever their pitch is, and it's always just like, well, okay. And so over the years they've gotten me to go from X to 3X or whatever, just based upon those asks, and just escalating me as someone they know. We've been giving to them since probably 95 or something like that. So, we've been doing this for 25 years, and they know that that they can come back to this well, and that they're probably going to be able to get a little bit more, or just at least, and it also becomes an educational opportunity. So it's not always just about asking, but maybe having that script be all of the great things that you were able to accomplish this year, and how much more you could do if you only could get to this $250,000 mark. So those are some tips to kind of re-engage. How often are you hitting your email list?
Not probably often enough. I do it around events or activities that are coming up. So around the Poetry Jam, our annual fundraising event, year-end appeal, that kind of stuff. So probably I need to engage that more.
Well, there's only one of you, so I would certainly, what you might do is look into your volunteer pool, your donor pool, and see if someone might be willing to help with that in either creating content or just helping manage the send, just to take a little bit of that lift off of your shoulders.
Yes.
Again, you have this crew of people and a reasonably sized email list, and so one of the asks might be, hey, we're looking for some social media support, or we're looking for some email support. If you have an interest in helping out in that capacity, we'd certainly love it. And just give people the opportunity to do a little bit more, because that's another thing that I've found with one of the organizations I'm on is people like to be actively participating, and if you can give them something to do, it's a mitzvah in that these people now have something to talk about and feel good about, and they're contributing. So I think particularly with solo executive directors who are kind of wearing all the hats, figuring out ways to take off a couple of those hats and spread that out a little bit would be something I would encourage.
Yes, and I have done that. I have a right hand of my program manager who works very hard on the mission and also doesn't get paid. And she has a full-time job. And then we have some volunteers that have stepped up and have taken over some things. And I as an executive director and the founder, you're like, I don't know if I want to let go of this. And I let go of some things. They're like, oh, great.
It's hard,
and
right?
They do it. Yeah. And they do it as well or better than me in some things. And so I'm like, okay, yep, here's more that you can do. So, and it's great because you're right, they want to do more, and it helps offer more programming, and it takes a load off me.
Yeah.
There's a lot to run an organization. Well, anyway.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we always joke that you should look for the things. So as an entrepreneur, particularly a solopreneur, we have to do all the things. And so the first things you should look for are the things that you hate and the things that that you're not very good at, and have someone else do those things. And particularly if you can combine those two things and get rid of that, that's like the first thing that should go.
Yeah, no kidding. Again, there's been a few things I'm like, oh my God, it's just amazing. So just to have some of those things, just some of the events that have been planned, sibling events that one of my volunteers have stepped up, and I'm like, oh, bless you.
That's awesome.
So, I can approve the budget, and I can approve, the needs, and make sure we're following all the rules that I have set. But and a lot gets done that I don't have to do. So it's great.
That is great. Did you remind me? I'm pretty sure that you said that you did record the poetry jam and this last event.
I need to ask and see. I think we did record it, but I have a lot of recordings that I did for the event. So we're going to use some of them in our year-end campaign. So I've been working on some things that we'll do. I need to get I made a birthday slideshow or our 5 years. So I'm going to get that out here soon and let people see it. So I just recently started using Canva, and then went ahead and got a subscription to Canva. Holy smokes, people. That's a little addicting, but also super. You get some great content, and you can tie it. I'm still learning it, but you can tie it into your social media, so you can schedule schedule social media posts from Canva.
Right.
I will do, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Canva's a great resource, a great tool. We use it a little bit. We have some more advanced design tools that we use, but certainly Canva is a really valuable tool, particularly for those people who aren't super design savvy, and they don't want to have the expense of Photoshop or something like that. So it's a fantastic tool. So it looks to me, at least on your site, I'm only seeing a Facebook icon. Is that the only social media platform that you guys are currently leveraging, or are you working on some others?
Clearly, I need to get my Instagram on there. Okay. So we just went to our website. So we're Facebook and Instagram are our two. I've gotten much more active on Instagram in the last few months.
Okay.
So, but Facebook has been where we've primarily been for 6 years.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think,
but we're definitely more on Instagram. It's such a different platform. A lot more cheery.
So, yeah. It's having the photo focus and the video focus is certainly nice.
Yeah.
This would be a place to leverage some of those assets that were created during your events and just get some of that stuff out. Particularly, if you have permission to use the Poetry Jam stuff. I think you and I talked about this a little bit the other day in terms of trying to target kind of outside of your actual targets.
Yes.
And so getting kids excited about what they're seeing and having them tell their parents about this amazing thing. And then, then those people turn into volunteers or donors or those kinds of things. And it's a little bit out of the norm. I mean, normally you just think about who it is you want to talk to and you want to go talk to those people. But a lot of times if you can get, an evangelist outside of that target, but attached to it to shout your praises or whatever that phrase is to really advance your cause and advance that messaging. That can be really super effective just because it's not a sales pitch at that point. It's not coming from you asking something. It's wow, my kid asked me about this, and there's so much emotion that gets tied up in that in terms of how proud you are that they thought this was cool and wanted to bring it to you, and so it can be really effective to look at your targeting and then see what's around it and kind of come in from through the side door instead of the front door.
Kids helping kids is one of my favorite things to do. I need to figure out how to leverage that better. Actually, that's a very good point. And I, now almost 6 years into this, I no longer, I've given up on the norm. I don't know what the norm is supposed to be for fundraising and growing an organization, but there are things happening and community partners and people on board with my mission that if you would have told me 5 years ago this would be the path that we took, I would have been like, oh, okay, you're funny. And now I'm like, don't poo-poo anything until you explore a little bit. So,
well, it's all just about creating relationships and building those connections. And you don't ever know exactly where something's going to go. And we have conversations all the time that you're like, well, I don't know that was a normal conversation, but then it turns into something kind of really fantastic. So, so just being flexible and thinking outside the box a little bit. Those are always helpful things to do. I know we're always trying to figure out some new angle on how to engage with our target audiences and bring real value to the table. Are there any so one of the things we like to talk about a lot is inbound marketing, where you're creating a piece of content or something of value that brings people into the fold, as opposed to necessarily going out and making cold calls and doing all this outreach type stuff. Are there any resource materials that you guys could develop for your constituents that help them get their arms wrapped around what the challenges are? Or we talk about white papers a lot. Those tend to be kind of more bottom of the funnel or middle of the funnel type content offers, but essentially those just tell your story in a numbers based way to allow people to understand how much good you guys are able to do. Are there any other things of that nature that you think people are looking for when they're starting to explore this problem with siblings being separated?
We've had some some marketing things like that over the years, nothing very concrete and something I keep wanting to do. But what I find that is perhaps unique to the work that we do in the population that we serve is people really want to understand what is the impact on the siblings. So the numbers are important and how many siblings are separated from each other. In Colorado, it's, hundreds into over 1,000 probably at any given time.
Right.
Nationwide, it's not millions, it's hundreds of thousands of kids that are separated from one or more of their siblings. So really understanding why people want to know why it happens, and then what they can do. And so any presentation I give or any talk I give, I bring in some numbers and some concepts depending on the audience, and what they want to learn. There's definitely, so all my PowerPoints, all my presentations have all of that information, and we provide that at any of our fundraising events, or say, so for example, we, in the first 9 months of this last fiscal year, so the one that just ended, 224 kids aged out of the foster care system without finding a permanent connection. So one of the groups that we work with is Colorado Comedy Shows. The founder and owner of that, he's a great comedian, and has embraced our mission. And so he's got a ticket and says it's $224. And explains, and then so we explain what that $224 is for.
Right.
And $224 equals the number of kids that have been aged out of the system, and then helps us connect with more kids and provide technology or more contact. Contact with their siblings. So really thinking about who we serve and how to grab people in a different way than the traditional fundraising and let me hand you a pamphlet about what we do kind of thing. People want to understand the story and why we do this and why it happens. That's a big question that we get.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that might be an opportunity to create some content in terms of either an infographic or just an explainer, a digital explainer sheet that really, a video, something like that. I mean, ideally, what you're hoping to do is exchange this item of value for an email address. So the goal here is to just build your list so that you're getting more and more people that you're bringing into the fold, and then you can get transition them into volunteers or donors or whatever else. However, it might be worth not putting that behind an email or asking on a page that you vend that information. So essentially saying, here's the thing, if you'd like to stay in touch and learn more and learn how we're positively affecting, these kids, here, sign up for our newsletter or sign up for our email. So really giving people that ability. And you do have a subscribe, feature down here at the bottom of your site. But just getting that, putting that to work a little bit more, moving that up the page a little bit more, really making that be, I think that donate is probably one of your big asks, as well.
Yes.
So, making sure that those buttons are the big ones on the page so that people know what it is that you want them to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's great. I think you have a lot of great assets and ways to kind of transform how you're doing things. I'm excited to hear how it all goes. As
Thank you. I will be shouting from the rooftops.
Nice. So, as you know, I like to end our conversations with an ask in terms of something that you would like people to do, and it doesn't, it could be anything. And so, what action would you like people to take after listening to this show?
You would probably think that I was going to say, "Could you donate to my organization?" But as I've been, and that would be great. But as I've have maneuvered and gone through this pandemic, and understanding what it's like to lose connection with the people that I love because I can't be in the same room with them or see them as much. I would really like everybody that's listening to reach out to somebody they haven't seen recently and just give a I love you or I miss you. And when we can see each other again, this is what I'd like to do. And then connect that with the siblings that we serve, and understanding that we're getting a small taste of what they go through. Ours is going to end. The kids we serve, we don't know if they're going to connect the way we're going to be able to connect. So you know what? I think right now I would really just appreciate everybody going out and connecting somehow, whatever that looks like, with somebody you've lost touch with in the last 7 months because the pandemic took over.
I love it. I think that that's a really great thing to do. And I have a couple people on the top of my list that I'll reach out to for sure. So you can be found at elevatingconnections.org. Are there any other places?
Yes.
Are you just /Elevating Connections on Facebook? Where else can you find?
Yes, and we're Elevating Connections on Instagram. I kept it very simple. So,
fantastic. That's good. That's good branding.
Yes. Yeah,
well, thank you
exactly.
so much. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was really good to talk with you again. And I love what you guys are doing and keep it up.
Thank you so much, Stu. I appreciate the time. Like I said, I love to talk about what I do. So thank you.
My pleasure. Anytime. All right. There you have it. Another episode of Relish This, the nonprofit marketing podcast. If you want to continue the conversation and see how we can unearth some gold for your organization, head over to relishstudio.com/podcast to sign up to be a guest on the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of Relish This.